Hi, today in Billy's Books we're going to do another book. This one is a Song of Achilles, what I'd like to call a tale of Eros and hubris. Welcome to Billy's Books. I'm going to review another book. This is not Star Wars. It's not a history book, though it is a history book. And here's why. It's historical fiction, which I usually steer clear of, okay? Because the problem with historical fiction is I eventually confuse the facts with the story infills and the characters that they make up, the characters make. However, we're dealing with Achilles here, so history is fiction with the great Greeks, because it's all myth anyway, so we don't know how much is true and what isn't. So when other writers fill in with oral histories from 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, what's the difference? So that's my rationale. So Song of Achilles is written by Madeline Miller. A while back I reviewed her other book, or her second book, I think it was second book, Circe, which is also from Greek myths. I think this one actually comes first. I'm going to say right out that Circe was great, this is great. Circe might be a little bit better because, she was honing her craft, but this is a pretty darn good book. Okay? So there we are. Achilles is a very famous warrior. He's a demigod. His mother was a goddess, and his father was a mortal king. A small, not very important king. It's from the perspective of Patroclus, if that's how you pronounce his name. He was Achilles' companion. So what happened was Patroclus, through a series of events that you have to read about to find out, ended up being orphaned by another small king. And so he got orphaned and got sent to the king, whose name I don't remember, who is Achilles' dad. And Achilles' dad had lots of orphans. I guess he had a big heart or something, or he just wanted lots of warriors in his kingdom. Whatever the case is, Patroclus became one of the many boys running around their court, and he was kind of a loser. One of the series of events is that he was kind of a loser even before, and he got picked on all the time, and he was super wimpy. But he had these dice that he really liked, and some other kid, while they were on the beach, said, "I want those dice." And Patroclus said, "You can't have them, they're mine." They fought. Eventually he pushed him, and the other little bully craphead boy fell down and cracked his skull on the rocks and died right before him. And that was enough to get disowned, because he was a murderer. So he ended up in the court and was ignored for a long time by all the other boys. But there, of course, holding court was the Prince Achilles, who was beautiful and strong and charismatic and prophesized to be a great warrior, the greatest warrior there ever was. And what's interesting is because he wasn't like a big dude like some of the other warriors. He was just fleet and really, really elegant and quick and fast and all these things, and he could do everything. And when he practiced his sword, you couldn't even see it. His hands were so quick and elegant that he was destined to be the greatest warrior. They wouldn't even, as a matter of fact, the king, his dad, wouldn't even let him practice in front of other people because it was such a secret. They wanted to keep him as a secret weapon. So Achilles would always practice by himself. Even though Patroclus, our protagonist, was ignored by all the other boys, he kept on making eye contact with Achilles, who eventually singled him out, said, "Come over," and obviously there was some sort of special chemistry, which turns out to be love. So this book is actually kind of almost a romance novel, by the way he describes, Achilles' full lips and elegant, beautiful hands, and his eyes. Every time they made eye contact, he got all trembly inside and didn't understand it because he was 9 at the beginning. But eventually he was like, "No, this guy's my companion." So wherever Achilles went, there was always a seat by his side for Patroclus, which he got used to. Patroclus was haunted by the killing he did, And so if you think about it, he actually killed someone long before Achilles did. And he was haunted in his dreams by the murdering of the guy. And he and Achilles would, after a while, they shared a room. Initially, Achilles was on a nice cush bed because he was a prince, and Patroclus would be on a flat, unkind pallet on the floor. But eventually, they were like both in bed. And it was ancient Greece, whatever. Achilles was a son of mortal. The man was the mortal, and the woman was a goddess. Did I mention that Achilles' mom, the goddess, Thetis, really did not like Patroclus? Yeah, she really didn't like him. As a matter of fact, he was terrified of her. I'm going to describe from the book that the goddess was unwilling, but because of the obligations that other people made, because everything is arranged marriages, so a mortal marries a goddess, and the goddess is unwilling, but still has to do it. But she didn't make it easy. The blood from the wounds she had given him mixed with the smears of lost maidenhood on her thighs. Her resistance mattered no longer. A deflowering was as binding as marriage vows. So just to remind you, from Madeline Miller may have some little feminist moments in these books. A lot in Circe and a few in this, because most of the characters are men, so it doesn't happen quite as often. When Achilles and Patroclus were first getting to know each other, Patroclus had been so used to ridicule and being stepped on by everybody else, but Achilles didn't do that because he was a special kind of guy. So there's just another short snippet here. I stopped watching for ridicule, the scorpion's tail hidden in his words, because Achilles was nice to him all the time. But he said what he meant. He was puzzled if you did not. Some people might have mistaken this for simplicity, but is it not a sort of genius to cut always to the heart? So one of the things we learned about Achilles is that he's got such a big heart that he doesn't understand why people would lie. And he also has a big heart. He has a lot of... Later on, he gets sent a slave girl, and he just saves him. He just says, nope, He actually takes a slave girl from Agamemnon, who is the big general at the Battle of Troy, and he takes him away. And Agamemnon can't do anything, even though Agamemnon's in charge, and Achilles is just one of his many soldiers. Achilles is the charismatic, beloved by all soldiers, whereas Agamemnon's kind of a dick, and nobody likes him. So when Achilles says, I claim her as the warrior, he can't do anything. And then he takes her and puts her very safely in a tent and protects her. And he does that for a while. He just keeps on saying, I want that woman, who they present, and then takes her away. And so they have a whole tent filled with women they've saved, which is pretty nice, I would have to say. Meanwhile, the other soldiers don't know that, so like, oh, you've got such an appetite, Achilles, what a guy, like the shtup. And he's like, I'm actually saving them from that, but I'm not going to tell you that. Which is pretty cool. I'm going to read, because they're teenagers, I'm going to read this page 59. It would have been easy, infinitely easy, for Achilles or me to have bedded one of these girls ourselves. At 13, we were almost late to do so, especially him, as princes were known for their appetites. Instead, we watched in silence as the foster boys pulled girls into their laps, or Peleus summoned the prettiest to his room after dinner. Once I even heard the king offer her to his son. He answered almost diffidently, I'm tired tonight. Later, as we walked back to our room, he avoided my eyes. So this is before they really consummated their relationship. And I was shy and silent with all but Achilles. I could scarcely speak to the other boys, let alone a girl. As a comrade of the prince, I suppose I would not have to speak. A gesture or a look would have been enough. But such a thing did not occur to me. The feelings that stirred in me at night seemed strangely distant from those serving girls with their lowered eyes and obedience. I watched a boy fumbling a girl's dress, the dull look on her face as she poured his wine. I did not wish for such a thing. One of the stories I haven't told you about is why not only is Achilles obligated to go to rescue Helen in the Trojan War, but so is Patroclus, because as an underage guy, before he was sent away, he also, as a 9-year-old, somehow was sworn by default to defend Helen against everything, which is really not fair because he did. And then when he got disowned, Achilles was like, the king disowned him. That means he no longer has to fight. He's no longer obligated to that bond. But when Odysseus and Agamemnon showed up and said, everybody who made that bond 10 years ago better fight, he got pulled in. But the parents of Achilles had a plan, which was to hide Achilles. So he was sent to the island of Skyros. And so when Odysseus and Agamemnon showed up to Skyros looking for people, knowing full well that, having heard that Achilles was there, he just danced around with the girls, and because he was so elegant, he got away with it until they pushed the point, and then of course they couldn't hide anymore. And so, you were found, and so was your cute little wimpy assistant. Must come too and fight. Did I mention that Achilles is prophesied to die in the Trojan War? So they really didn't want to go, and they made all sorts of excuses, all of which were disregarded. And they went anyway. But then when they finally got to Troy and they laid siege and everything, they still did some attacking. Achilles said to Patroclus, who was absolutely terrified to go into battle because he never really trained and he was a wimp even if he had trained. Achilles was like, I got you. And so when the first day they went into battle, Achilles, he was just amazed by how good Achilles was at killing, and he somehow managed to keep it. He compartmentalized his compassion with all the murdering he was doing. And before this and after this, every night he would go home to Patroclus and sort of purge all his feelings and tell all the stories about everyone he killed. He'd cry in his lap, and then he'd be free of it for the next day to do some more killing. One of the days that Patroclus would have to go into battle, Achilles was always right there, and somehow he survived. And at the end of the day, he realized he had hardly moved, and he was in this little square the whole time. And it dawned on him at the end of the day, I'm only alive because Achilles, if he saw some Trojan attacking him, he would go over and whoop, chop his head off, and off you go. And so he survived the day. And over time, he didn't have to do that many battles. And over time is a serious thing, because where I'm right now, they've been at Troy for the siege of Troy for 4 years, and the soldiers are getting pretty restless. So I'm not going to tell you the ending, because you may not know how Achilles dies. So I'm not going to tell you. And you know me, I never like to tell the ending of stories anyway, because the storytelling includes reveals. So it's a great book. I'm really enjoying it. If you can't do, review.